Hey y'all, welcome back. It's another week and we have another episode for you. I hope you all had a good time. And before we start today's episode, as always, we do say, do subscribe if you haven't subscribed. If you're new here, please do subscribe and share the video. Leave a good comment if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. Leave a good review, 5 stars preferably. But yeah,
share. Most importantly, share
it. Let people be blessed just like the way you are being blessed. So we always start with a question for the week.
Yep.
And this is actually one of the ones that we got from our live episode in church. And the question is, I think this one is it's more for you to answer.
Me?
Yep. I can answer, but you understand.
All right, go for it.
What is the most important, blah, blah, blah. What is the importance of a prayerful man in a marriage? We hear the phrase, I have a prayerful mom, but it's rare to hear I have a prayerful dad.
Ooh.
Importance of a prayerful man.
One of the things that you have to understand is that the man being, when God gave man work, it was mainly to do with protection. As the head of the house, you're protecting. You are the forefront. You're the one who is supposed to be the door to the family. So one of the ways that people can always, and the enemy can always try to get into the home, is to get through the doorway. If the security on the door is not great, then he's going to get that. That's why we see a lot of men being attacked nowadays. A lot of fathers not being at home. Yeah. The enemy has a plan. And a lot of the women that are suffering, sometimes you realize when you trace it back, have issues with fathers not being at home. Mm-hmm. When you see some of the young men that are not doing what they're supposed to do and have gone away, sometimes, most of the time, it's issues with fathers not being at home. There's a strong correlation between fathers not being at home and the behavior of the next generation. Mm-hmm. All right, so if a man is not prayerful, if the enemy wants to attack a family, the first thing it's going to get to is the man. Mm-hmm. And it comes out through different ways. Either they're busy or they're doing other things or loads and loads of other things. So I think one thing that we need to address is that men, we need to stand up and start praying. Mm. We need to stand up and start attending to service. Even in services, when you go to churches, most of the people in church are females. Yeah. So it's very, very important as the gateway to your home, as the gateway to your family. You need to be engaged in constant prayer in a good relationship with your family. But one of the reasons why I feel like we don't see it as often is because the enemy knows this and knows the importance of it. So we'll always reach out to attack and to stop them from doing what God has planned them to do. What do you think?
I mean, I'm not a man, but from my viewpoint, you're not far from the truth, which is, there is an order that God has set for the home.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if, the woman is quote unquote praying and covering the family spiritually, because it's not in the right order. It's not an order that God can work with because she's not the head. And like my husband was saying, the reason why you hear a lot of praying moms and not praying dads is because the devil knows exactly where to attack.
Yeah.
And so men have become the target, and it's for men to rise up, really and truly. There's no other way to put it. It's really for men to rise up and take their place, because allowing the woman to cover in prayer is a mixed position that God can't work with. And then the last thing I was going to say was sometimes also you can have in a home where both parents are prayerful, but they look different. So I think sometimes we can also misinterpret who is more prayerful by the way they pray. Women are more emotional. Women are more expressive. So when we pray, typically when I'm praying at home, the whole house knows I'm praying.
Yeah.
But when my husband is praying, it's not as expressive as I am. So there may be a home where, your father may not necessarily be the most expressive in prayer, but that does not necessarily mean that he's not prayerful. And sometimes we mistake expression for power, and it's not always the same. It's just like when it comes to the healing ministry, the fact that someone can just, speak to someone and say, be healed in the name of Jesus, and they start walking. And there will also be someone else that has to go through the shenanigans and all the, spiritual drama to get the power.
I was going to say jargons, but you said drama. That's
to get the power flowing. And power is not shouting. Power is not aggression. Power is authority. So for any man that understands his place of authority, he knows that because I am an authority, when I speak, things must happen. And it's also for men to realize their authority. That even if the woman is in prayer and travailing for hours and hours and hours, your authority is so much higher that when you speak, things have to change and things have to shift. So besides them praying more, is for them to exercise the authority. I think that's also the key thing that might be missing, is in them exercising the authority. So, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so that brings us to today's topic. And today we are talking about what have I forgotten? No, I haven't forgotten. Things to get rid of in a relationship, things to avoid in your marriage, in your relationship, in your business, in your walk with God, but mainly in the area of relationships, so marriage, dating, and stuff like that. The reason why we're talking about these things is because I think a lot of people amplify, what to look out for, but there's also things to run away from, if that makes sense. These are not necessarily red flags, but these are things to avoid when the commitment is there. So in like a solid relationship, things to avoid. And I would say one of the things that, on a more practical level, one of the things that I would advise, particularly women, to avoid in relationships and marriage is long conflicts. It's natural and it's human for a relationship to go through some kind of challenge, like a conflict, disagreement, and stuff like that. But avoid prolonging that season, because prolonging that season is exactly what the enemy can use to nurture and introduce a lot of demonic spirits, because now it might just start with an argument, but then because it becomes prolonged, then it turns into some kind of resentment. Then from the resentment, you just go into some form of like unforgiveness or bitterness towards them. So it graduates, because I think the way demonic spirits work is that they amplify themselves the more room they have. So when you just curb it right from the get-go, it has no power over you.
And also it stops you from overthinking and dwelling on it and adding things and, just putting things that are not supposed to be there. I mean, like, sometimes it can be something so simple and it can be solved immediately. But because you haven't spoken about it and because you haven't, like, sorted it out straight away, you'll be thinking about it and then you'll add stories to it. You'll say, oh, that's why on this day he did this. That's why he's acting like this. And then all of a sudden it's like amplified. And then when it comes to having a discussion, you're not discussing the actual issue, which is not like
you're discussing
the massive
all the
deal.
things
You're
you discuss in your
loads
head.
and loads of things that, and it leaves room for the enemy to plant seeds in your mind as well.
Because the devil likes isolation. Like when you think about the story in the beginning of creation, when the devil went to Eve, it was when she was isolated.
Even Jesus, the same thing.
Yes, when she was isolated from her husband, when she was alone, then he could feed into her thoughts. And the enemy really thrives in isolation. The first thing he would do is to cut you off from the people that would help you and the people that can speak to your doubts and speak to your fears. So it's always important to not, prolong that season. When you realize there's a funk or there's something happening, do everything that you can to deal with it before it becomes an
isolation
situation.
thing. 100%. When you're alone, especially if you're not with them, like you've had a disagreement and you're not with them, the enemy can give you things to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, in the same way God can use it. If you go to God and sometimes God can use like Moses.
Yeah.
God had to take Moses alone in order for him to receive his blessing and then send him out. You know, people like that. David had his time alone. Other people, loads of people had the time alone with God. Abraham, all of those people. But then also, so did Judas. You know, Judas was with the other disciples, and Jesus blatantly told him, whatever you have to do, go and do it.
Yeah.
And whatever spirit picked him up and took him away from the disciples, and the next thing you know, he has betrayed Jesus. You know, at what time did he have time to have conversations with, you know, the Jewish leaders and stuff like that, and the Roman soldiers? It's because he was with them alone. And if he had been with the disciples at that time, I don't believe he would have done what he had done. But the enemy had to put him in an alone state so that he could do what he did in order to get Jesus crucified. So, I mean, when you're alone, you can either use that time properly, spend time with God, and then go back to it straight away and say, okay, cool, let's talk about it. Or if you dwell on it for too long, then the enemy starts planting seeds, and then suddenly you find yourself, you know, saying certain things and thinking certain things that didn't necessarily need to be in there. Yeah.
How about you?
Me personally, I would say the number one thing that you should get out or run away from, avoid, all right, is disrespect, and it goes both ways. You know, if you respect one another, it allows the relationship, like you can't be in a relationship going into marriage and you're already insulting each other. You can't get into marriage and you're talking about each other badly. You're like, even if you don't like something that they did, find a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You can't go into it with disrespect. You can't go into it saying, you have to watch the way you speak. You have to watch the way you say certain things. You can't. I know some people that blatantly call their husband names. Do you know what I mean? Like straight in front of their face, you're an idiot, you're a fool, you're this, like straight in their face, swear words, you know, comparing them to other people. That's straight disrespect. You know, calling your wife like useless or you're not good for anything, you're just bringing trouble, like just blatant disrespect in front of each other's faces is something that I would stay straight away from. If you want to be together, you have to find a mutual respect. You have to have a way of speaking to each other that shows love and care and shows respect to each other, rather than blatantly just, you know, being able. I mean, I don't know how people do it. Just blatantly look at your wife or your spouse or your partner and want to make them upset. Like it's bad to have that intention to disrespect them. So maybe, I'm not saying like you're perfect. Things will happen. Sometimes you'll say certain things and you have to take it back, try and take it back. Or, you know, they have to let certain things go and you'll slip up once in a while and, you know, your emotions get the best out of you. All of these things happen. But to intentionally try to say certain things to hurt someone else, intentionally try to disrespect them in order to maybe feel like you are just to make yourself feel better. You know, when people try to get their own back just to like make themselves feel better, things like that really, really, really gets to me. So I honestly think intentional disrespect is something that I would stay so far away from. Intentional disrespect can kill a relationship earlier than just ruin it, basically.
Yeah. Quite similar. Well, it's not exactly what I was going to say, but quite similar to that is also like open disagreement. Like it's okay as a couple or being in a relationship to disagree, but to do that publicly can negatively affect your marriage or
Yeah.
your relationship. I'm not saying that, oh, like always pretend and fake it. And there are certain things like they're like public opinion, right? And you don't always agree on certain things. But I'm talking about like, this is like a disagreement, an argument, not necessarily like sharing your opinion, but this is an argument or disagreement publicly. Because I think like, our older generation, our moms and our grandparents have taught us to always agree in public and fix things in secret.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might think, oh, like it's you being fake, or you're not being true to yourself. But it's wisdom and it's maturity.
Yeah.
When you're mature, you know how to behave yourself publicly.
Yeah.
And you know that it's not you being fake, it's just you being mature. So in light of that, avoid public disagreement, because the truth is, it may not even be that deep for you as a couple, like because maybe you disagree privately, but for the third person viewing, they might think, oh, like
you open a door for disrespect.
Yeah, because the
third
third person is thinking like, oh, these people, is that how they talk to each other? Is there a problem?
Yeah,
Are they having
yeah.
marital problems? And maybe after that moment, you go back to your home and you and your husband are fine. You and your fiance or whatever, you guys are actually...
in the car on the way back, you guys have
you're
discussed
fine.
it. Everything's okay.
You're
fine.
happy. But then other people or the person that viewed it is just thinking negatively of your relationship. And it just reduces that kind of respect that they had for both of you.
I think also it opens the door for them to disrespect your spouse the way you disrespected your spouse.
Yeah.
If you're able to talk to them in a certain way and in front of people as well, it will also open up the door for other people to also feel the same way and say certain things. There's one thing
you teach people how to treat them.
Exactly. One thing I always say is especially for my children, I want to create an atmosphere around my kids where people understand that you have to respect them. You have to respect them because their father loves them, the father cares about them, and he talks highly about them. You find out when you talk badly about your children, when you talk badly about your wife, then people start thinking badly about them, and then it's the same kind of thing.
It's like practically. So I think there was someone that one of our kids were like, just not behaving properly, and they were telling them off. And I mean, sometimes it does take a community to raise your child. So hey, but there's a certain level to which you can tell my child off. Like I am allowed to tell them off to a certain extent, and you're not allowed to. And I think sometimes as parents, we teach people how to parent our kids by the way we publicly, relate with them.
Yeah.
And I think there was even a moment where it was like, I had to check myself on how I was correcting our child, because as much as she's young, she's still human and has feelings, and she has a feeling of like maybe shame or shyness or that kind of thing. So I had to be intentional about it. So in the moment when I read the room, I was like, okay, maybe you're doing too much now.
True.
And it's like a typical African parent, when you would see a typical African mom in the shops and you see their child misbehaving, and I, as an African parent, I already know that by the time they go home, it's not going to go down well for this child. But, in the shop, they're just like, stop it. Like, they're just like giving these little cute cues. But I know that when they go home, it's going to be it's going to be peak. And it's the same way in your relationship. Like, you don't just stand out in public and just talk anyhow because of how you're feeling. There's a way to publicly relate with your partner and correct them in love
100%.
in private. But the second thing I was jumping on to was to avoid friendships that you don't both agree with.
Okay.
So be very mindful of friendships that
people that you surround yourself with,
the people that you avoid. I think I'm basically saying avoid being friends with someone your partner doesn't like.
Okay.
Sometimes I don't know. It's a weird generation that we're in.
Is it just your partner doesn't like them, or is it like they don't like your partner?
If they don't like your partner, that's even easier.
No, but like I'm saying, like, what if
they don't like your partner? Why are they in their space?
No, but that's what I'm saying. I'm just asking, like, what when they don't like their partner, that one is a different
Okay,
story.
so
That
if
one
someone
is 100%.
doesn't like me.
So if someone doesn't like you, that one I can
So
definitely.
why are you friends with my husband then?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Let me finish. Like,
Yeah.
All right. So we have acknowledged that if someone doesn't like you, or if someone doesn't like your spouse, that one's a no-go area.
Yeah.
You don't entertain it. You don't bring it forward.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But if it's just, imagine, right? They love your wife. They respect your wife. They've done everything that they can. They're not showing any signs of disrespect.
Mm-hmm.
They've not shown any signs of like they want to break you guys up, or they don't respect your relationship or anything like that. They've got every boundary in place.
Mm-hmm.
But your spouse has a funny feeling about them and just doesn't like them.
Yeah,
How do you handle and how do you navigate? Because the reason why I'm asking is because the way you said it is like, your spouse doesn't like. It's like, as soon as your spouse says no, then it's like, okay, cool, go. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's not always that easy. For some people that have like best friends, like really female best friends, and it's legit best friends. Like when we were dating, your best friend was a male.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When we were dating, your best friend.
It's weird to think, but yeah.
Yeah. So your best friend was a male. Yeah. Imagine I came into the picture and I'm just like, I don't like him. Is it
so
an automatic like
that,
boom gone?
Yes. If you had said that, I would.
I'm just playing devil's advocate, by the way.
Yeah.
Don't think that.
No, because there's
people that find themselves in this situation.
Even at the moment, you're now closer to him than I.
Yeah.
You
100%.
You talk to him more than I do even now, which is quite interesting.
But it's not us. So
yes.
I'm just saying.
But I'm just saying, in a scenario like that, I would be intentional about not being as close. I think it's just wisdom, you know. At the end of the day, you have to choose your heart. You have to choose what's important to you.
Yeah.
And if you decide that this is a battle that you're going to fight in your relationship or in your marriage, that's the lot you chose, and you're going to have to deal with it for a long time. At the end of the day, relationships are exclusive, and it comes as a result of choice.
Yeah.
Relationships don't just happen. They're intentional. You choose who you want to be friends with. You invest into friendships. Friendships just don't happen. So in the same way, if your partner is uncomfortable with someone and they seem okay, but they really and truly are not comfortable with them, it's a matter of choice.
Yeah.
You decide if you want. It's not like, you know, some people say, well, we've been best friends for years, but it's the fact that you've been best friends for years is not automatic that the friendship will stay for years. It's because you nurture that relationship and you water it. So what do you have to do? You have to reduce the amount of effort that you put into that relationship. I'm not saying cut them off completely, but if that's what your partner wants, it's something for you to discuss between the two of you. But you don't feed and nurture that relationship as much as you did before, because it makes your partner uncomfortable. Choose which relationship is more important to you. So I think in that regard, you need to be very intentional about, you know, what's important to you and where you nurture and which relationship you water. But generally in that respect, so that's like one scenario, but I'm just saying generally avoid friendships or relationships that either of you is not comfortable with, because marriage and relationships are quite different, but marriage is designed in a way that the Bible says that the two become one. So you're not separate, you're one. And the moment you become one, if there's an external relationship that seeks to bring a divide, it's in a very subtle way breaking the foundation of the marriage. So anything that threatens the unity of a marriage is something to avoid.
And personally, also look out for such signs. If your partner is the kind of person that just doesn't like you being with anyone except for them, that's a massive red flag.
That one too, please,
I don't like this friend. I don't like this friend. I don't like this friend. Like you know, there's some certain people. It's like, if it's not me, then it's no one else kind of thing. Why are you hanging around with someone else?
Yeah.
So have a look at such things. If they're jealous, extremely jealous for no reason, then don't put yourself in a situation where you get married and all of a sudden they don't want you to be with your friends.
To be
Because at that
honest,
time,
I think-
after marriage, it's too late.
Yeah.
You're going to have to cut people off.
Yeah, the way I would interpret that is witchcraft, because it's manipulation, and the
Yeah.
Bible, describes witchcraft as
Control,
manipulation
yeah.
and control. Anything that seeks to control you and manipulate you to do the things they want
Yeah.
is a form of witchcraft,
It's like your spouse not getting along with your mom and your brothers and stuff like that. It's just
and
come
very
on, man.
controlling. So it's something to look out for. You need to have a very strong spirit of discernment to know when your spouse is controlling you versus when they are actually looking out for you.
Yeah.
Because it's not always from a good place. And sometimes they may not even know that there's a controlling spirit working in them.
Yeah.
And it's for you to seek God for wisdom on how to communicate that, of course, so that they don't take offense. You can't
Yeah.
just go and be like, you're being a witch. But, ask God for wisdom on how to communicate that in love, so that you can call out that spirit that's operating in them that they don't even know is working through them.
Yeah. I also think one more thing
Yeah.
before, emotions. Having like not being able to control your emotions. I think before you get into a relationship, learn to get your emotions in check.
Yeah.
You can't make emotional decisions. You can't make emotional statements. You always have to try and if you find that your spouse, whoever is male, female, whoever you're dating, whoever you're seeing, whoever you're thinking about, always is emotional, then be careful. Like, look at their lifestyle. Look at how they are. Look how they are even at church. Are they emotional at church? Is it one time, I'm in love of God, I want to be in it, I want to do everything, and then the next time they're not doing anything, they're not praying? Is it another time they're reading their Bibles and then studying, and it's just all emotions.
That's a clear
makes
definition of a carnal person.
Yeah, it makes you make silly decisions, number one, and it also makes you go away from the duty that God has given to you as a spouse. You can't be a good spouse if you're always deciding things based on how you feel. If you're always making emotional decisions,
You're carnal.
it's just, and carnality in a marriage is not going to work. As a Christian, in a relationship, it's not going to work. You can't, number one, as a man, you will not enjoy always having to cater to the woman's emotions. You can't keep up. You can't always, one time she's happy and then you have to do something, and another time she's sad and you have to do something. You always have to, no, it's not. You have to look out for those things. You have to be able to have the joy of the Lord even if things aren't going perfect. There's times where, let's say, there's times where you don't want to go to work. You still stand up as duty and say, okay, I'm going to work because like I need to go to work. I need to make some money. I need to pay bills. It's a responsibility. And in the same way with your marriage, sometimes you have to see it as a responsibility. And it sounds bad. I know
But
sometimes
it
it sounds
is.
bad. Sometimes
It's an
it's a
assignment.
responsibility.
Yeah, it's an assignment. Yeah.
The woman will can upset you. You don't say, oh, she's upset me, I'm not going to give her money. I'm not going to provide for her. I'm not going to protect her. She can do whatever she wants. I'm not going to pray for her today. Like, it's your duty as a man to do it. As a woman, it's like, oh, I'm emotional. Like, I don't feel like it. I'm not going to cook today. I'm not going to, I'm not being anything. I'm just like the stereotypical, traditional home. I'm not gonna cook for him. He can do his own food. I'm not even gonna serve him. I'm gonna cook, but he can serve himself. Like, your husband will know when you're upset by the way you're acting and the way you're reacting and the things that you're doing. You don't say hi when he walks in. You're just around him. But things like that have to be a choice, because you're not always going to feel the same way as you did when you first got together. After a while, duty has to kick in. Responsibility has to kick in. You're not always going to feel like, oh, let me buy her roses, let me do things. Like, I get those times sometimes where it's like, oh, I miss her so much, let me get her something. But then there's times like, I haven't bought her something in a while, let me buy her something. It's just like a responsibility. Like, I'm doing it because I know how this will make her feel. I know it will make her happy. And it doesn't matter how I feel, because there's times where I don't have the money to splash on other things, but I still think, okay, let me put it together and do something for my wife because I know it'll make her happy. And it's a dutiful kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that interprets, the phrase that love is a decision.
Yeah.
And it's not an emotion. And even if you look at the typical or the best example of the display of love is Jesus dying for us. And we see very clearly in the scriptures that Jesus did not. I think sometimes we underestimate the sacrifice because we think like, oh yeah,
100%.
he just braced himself up for it. Like he knew, yeah, this was my mission, so I was gonna die. So he came with a super, but he was a human being. He was fully God, but he was still very much human. And when you read through the pages of scripture, he did not want to die. He didn't even sugarcoat it. As supernatural as he was, he very much expressed his feelings and did not want to die. His very assignment on earth, when it came to the time of fulfillment of that assignment, he didn't want to do it. But because of the love that he had for us and his assignment being fueled by love and he himself being the embodiment of love, he had to make the decision and said, you know what, I really don't want to do this, but nevertheless, it's not my will. It's not what I want. Okay, let your will be done. And I think it's the same way in marriages as well. It's like it gets to a point where your love has to be fueled by decision and not feelings, because feelings changed. I watched this short video on Instagram or somewhere, and the man of God was talking about he said, for example, you're upset about a situation, like really, really upset. Let's say you got fired from your job and you're so upset. Instantly, your emotions go down. You start crying. Sometimes it's like a feeling of depression coming over you. There's just so many negative emotions happening. And then let's say 1 or 2 days after you got fired from your job, someone sent you an email or sent you an alert and says, you've got £3 million in your account. Instantly, like that feeling of depression, like all those negative emotions disappear in an instant. And even in that instance, after getting that 3 million, maybe the person comes 2 days later and says, oh, sorry, I changed my mind. Your emotions just go back down. So your emotions are not even certain. Like your emotions don't know what it wants. It's just going with the flow. It's going with happenstance, right? But your decisions are more powerful because you determine how you respond to situations
100%.
Rather than, letting situations respond to you. So these are some of the few things that we want to encourage you to do. Be intentional about. And let us also know in the comments, like, what are some of the things that you do in your marriage? It could help someone, watching this video
100%.
to overcome some of the challenges and difficulties that they have. So what are some of the things that you do or the things that you avoid in your relationship? Like we always say, like in your marriage.
We're always trying to build a community of people to have these discussions. It's not just us just talking to you, but just raising a discussion for you to, go to your spouse and speak to them about it. Go to the person you're going to marry, have a discussion so that you can point certain things out and see certain things that we may say, and then get their point of views on it. I know so many people that have come to us and said, we watched your podcast and it made us question some of the things that we say to each other, how we talk to each other. And as we did that, it improved and we got some certain points. So just raise a community, put yourselves, share with other people, other couples, other people who are looking to get married. Write in the comments and let's just build a wonderful community where we'll be able to discuss such things and go over them. But we're glad to have you back and we're glad to be back this week discussing more, and we're looking forward to having you back next week again. Don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to share, don't forget to let people know more and more about the Kobe and Kuka podcast so that we can reach them and just be a blessing to them as well. Thank you very much. I thought you were going to say something else.
No, I'm just All right, we'll catch you guys next week.
Take care, guys.
Bye.